In today's episode, I am talking to my friend from growing up, Thomas JT Marbury. He spent his entire career in the military and he learned a thing or two about leadership along the way. So if you have ever been at rock bottom, just been in a really tough place and need to dig yourself back out of it, he's got some amazing tips for how he got himself out of a bad place and how you can just put one foot in front of the other, succeed, and be the best you can be. So enjoy my conversation with JT. Welcome to Seekers and Shifters, where we talk to the world's foremost experts in personal growth and development and ask them everything we really want to know. Hey there, Seekers and Shifters. It's your girl, Michelle, and I am here with Thomas JT Marbury, straight out of Lawton, Oklahoma, my friend from growing up. But please, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, we caught up all these years later, didn't we? And, we were just talking how going through the phases and chapters of life, and you get to a point when, you're pushing north of 40, where you realize, man, it's time to give back. I've got so much to give, right? And just to see where, obviously you've gone from back then and all your life experiences, trials, tribulations, positive and negatives. And I'm kind of on that same wavelength too. It's like, man, there's a lot of experience there. I should probably be sharing some of these experiences. So make a long story short, Michelle, you and I went to high school together. We knew of each other. We had a couple classes together. And then our paths kind of split. I ended up going to college on a track and field scholarship, a military college at that, in Charleston, South Carolina, a place called the Citadel. So major life decisions, 0 for 1 right there. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. It was a great time. And then I was, thrust into the mantle of leadership early, into the U.S. Army as an officer for 23 years, a couple of deployments to lands far, far away. Came back and did various jobs as a chief of staff, chief logistics officer, chief operations officer, general's aide a couple times. So really got to see the world and got to see and taste different types and flavors of leadership. And, one thing I really gleaned was, of all the great leaders I also saw a lot of, man, I never want to be like that. Right. And so that's kind of my intro. I recently retired a little over a year ago. And I spend my time now working for a major logistics and supply delivery company. I won't say them by name because this is absolutely not for attribution, but it is a major logistics and supply company, delivery company. And I'll tap the table and, your guests could probably figure out which one, because we do have everything from A to Z. And I'll just leave it at that. So I run a delivery station, which has about 500 associates and about 600 vehicles. And we're delivering probably about 165,000 miles a day. And so left the Army, retired from the Army, and got right back into the gauntlet and mantle of leadership. And so that's what I hope to provide here in conjunction with you. It's just some tips and pointers on that. But really some tips and pointers on, we talked about this in the run up, is sometimes you just gotta slow time down and really focus on what you as a person need, right? Because leaders are always checking on others, but as a leader, nobody's really checking on you. It's up to you to check on you. Nobody's going to look out for yourself other than you. And so I hope to offer some pointers and some thoughts on that as well.
Oh, 100%. Like one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the show is because, we were Facebook friends or friends on social media. And, maybe a couple of years ago, I just started to notice your posts, and they were very positive. They were very leadership focused. You were posting like a coach. And I was going, man, I thought this was an Army guy. Like, what's going on? And I didn't really, like you said, our paths had diverged. I hadn't really kept up with what was going on with you. But I was like, man, this guy, the way he's showing up, I love it. Like, we need more of this. And a lot of the people that we grew up with, like, aren't posting like that. There's a lot of negativity. We grew up in a place that's a little bit rough for a lot of the people there. There's a lot of poverty there. There's a lot of the stress there, a lot of scarcity and lack. And some people kind of got out of it and some people didn't. And it's really kind of interesting to see how a bunch of people that started in the same place, kind of where they went. Obviously, the Citadel is super prestigious, and you were thrust into leadership from an early age, spent a long time in high-level leadership positions with a lot of responsibility. And like you said, you saw people that you wanted to emulate and model, and then you saw people that you were like, oh, I want to be the opposite of what what that guy's doing or what that gal is doing. But I cannot even imagine the depth of the knowledge of leadership that you have at this point, having the career that you've had. So I mean, where do we want to even start with that? Like, I guess for people who are feeling stuck where they are, or feeling like their circumstances, like a lot of the people that we know, have put them in a place where they're not going to get out, or things aren't going to get better for them, what would you say to somebody in that situation?
While you were talking, I wrote down something that I was going to lead in with. And I think if we just start with, people that are out there that are just struggling a little bit, I think what I would say to them, what I would offer to other people, that I talk to and lead today is, you control your you. And so what that means is you control your you is what I've learned and gleaned, and what I try to softly impress upon people is life is about decisions and consequences. And once we understand that at our level, things open up for us exponentially if we do routine things routinely. And so what I mean by that is life is about decisions and consequences. What I mean by that is you have to take it upon yourself to want to be better for whatever your intrinsic or extrinsic motivations could be, whether that's to be better for your children that are watching you, your friends that are counting on you, your family that's thinking about you, or your employees that look up to you. You got to care about you first. So you got to kind of establish like a baseline and a bedrock. You control your you. And so what I tell people is you've got to start with habits. Habits. And when you have a lot of habits and you do them consecutively, Michelle, they lead to discipline. So if you establish habits, that creates a natural discipline. And then the natural discipline creates what your standard ethics, morals, just how you go about life, work, even in your relationship. By coming back, centering on doing those routine things routinely. And it could be little things. Like a lot of people at our rate, our position, our expertise, and even people starting out, they have a tendency to focus on, oh man, I got to take leaps and bounds, right? Success to me, like we're really hard on ourselves. We've built a society where we're always trying to measure ourselves against others. But if we bring it back home, success is also measured in baby steps, right? If you take a step forward, guess what? That is one step further than you were yesterday. And so you can break this all the way down as rudimentary as you want to go. Maybe your first habit is just getting up in the morning and just making your bed, right? Maybe it's washing the dishes before you go to bed at night so you don't have to waste time doing that in the morning, right? Success can be as small as that, right? And I think we're really hard on ourselves where we don't need to be. So obviously scale is necessary, but rule number one is I tell people, you control your you. Build the habits, do the habits, and then it's a conscious decision if you didn't conduct your habit. And then you got to have a conversation with yourself on, okay, what was the barrier? And study the barrier and decide whether or not it's really a barrier or if you're just being unaccountable for yourself. Let's start there, right? Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree, and I'm a latecomer to that idea. When you go straight into the military, obviously there's a lot of habits drilled into you immediately. Like you don't have a choice about whether you're going to make your bed or iron your clothes or shine your shoes. That's part of the deal. And so everybody that I know that's come out of the military after 20 years now has a lot of amazing habits because it's built in. For the rest of us, nobody was standing over us making us do it. I was not a person who gave a fuck about making my bed until a couple of years ago, when I really came around to, if I just make my bed, which by the way takes about 30 seconds if you're not like a wild sleeper. I don't make my bed military style, to be fair, but I make it well enough. Okay, I've started on a win. I've started on a little win today. If I then get up and I eat something healthy for breakfast, if I then get up and I go to the gym, I've started on a win. And those habits compound. And what I noticed is when my life gets thrown off, because we know now in our 40s, like wild stuff starts to happen. You start to have people die. You get bad health stuff, or, a lot of people are thrown off by what's going on politically or whatever. But if there's anything that happens where I wake up and I just don't feel like it, doing it anyway gets me out of my shit, right? Like, oh, but this is the routine. This is what I do. I get up and I make my bed and I make my protein coffee and I go to the gym, whether I feel good or whether I feel bad. I don't have to set the gym on fire every time, but it's the habit of going that then by noon, it's like I've already stacked 10 wins because I've done 10 habits. I'm a huge fan of the book Atomic Habits. We've talked about it on the show before. They have an app that I just found. It's called Atoms. So if you want to develop another habit, you can get the Atoms app and it'll remind you. So I just started a habit because people who listen to the show know that I've been working on my weight. And one of the bad habits, because I have bad habits too, one of the bad habits that I had gotten into during COVID when I was just bored and at home, and I live in a place that was locked down for like a really long time, like 2 years, was late night snacking, just watching TV and snacking late at night. So the new habit that I've started, which is not that extreme, is just don't eat after 9 p.m. I'm going to move it back as we go, but we're starting with 9 p.m.
That's so hard. That's so hard.
I just don't eat after 9. It is hard because my partner, Brad, he's like a super late night person. He's like eating till midnight. He's like next to me snacking. And I'm just like, no, I'm not eating after 9 p.m. And the Atoms app makes you kind of say why. And so I said, because I want to be a thin, healthy person, I'm not. And so every day at about 9 p.m., it reminds me, it says, don't eat after 9 p.m. because you want to be a thin, healthy person. And boy, that is so motivating. I want to get that streak. I want to click that button. It's gamified, but there's a compound interest to this, just like with money, where there's compound interest. If you're going to the gym, if you're eating clean, it might be a month, 2 months, 3 months before you even see anything. Just like if you invested your money, maybe you're not going to see a huge gain in 3 months. But if you continue to invest the same amount of money every month, no matter what the market's doing, eventually you're going to start to see that mushroom effect. If you go to the gym every day, no matter how you feel, eventually you're going to see that muscle. I got some good biceps, by the way. There's so much power in habit.
Yeah.
And I love how you're bringing it to mastering yourself, because really at the end of the day, you can't control anything or anyone else, but you can always control yourself, right?
Yeah. Michelle, I love that you brought up the gym thing, and not to turn people off or turn people away or spurn them in any way, but my public service announcement to all your viewers and followers is, that's what you just said. Nobody is going to take care of you the way you take care of yourself. And this isn't a lecture on what you should do, but I will tell you, obviously, fitness and good health was a way of life for me for so long because I had to be. There's obviously standards that we had to make and keep. But I will tell you, you hit the nail on the head. Like, that is that is the most important investment, is the investment you make in yourself. Because, whatever your lifestyle choices are regarding food and working out and things of that nature, you are literally taking your future into your own hands, and you're extending your livelihood, not really for your benefit, but for the benefit of others that love you or think about you or, are enamored with your presence. So why wouldn't you want to do that? We have, insurance for our phone, insurance for our homes, insurance for our car. We have life insurance, we have health insurance, but why wouldn't you have insurance for your own fitness level? And we're not talking about taking people and turning them into triathletes, but it goes back to that routine and the habits I was talking about, right? One of the things I really strive to do is own the night. And what I mean by that is I wake up every morning before I go to work, and I make sure I do something, whether that's a light jog, a more brisk run, could even be a walk. Even if the weather sucks, I am going to try to win the day before 6 o'clock. I should call it seize the day before 0600. And so in layman's term, that means take control of your life. Do something uncomfortable. Be the uncommon amongst the common. And then when you go to work, as you're looking around, it's like, man, I've done more by 6 o'clock than half of these people, right? So make it a little challenge, and force yourself to do it. I got to the point to where I was putting Post-it notes on my mirror, my bathroom mirror, to keep me accountable, right? And then, if I didn't do that, I would ask myself, why? What was the barrier? And I would ask myself 5 whys. That's my other little thing I have. It's called 5 whys. Anytime you hit a barrier, you've got to ask yourself why 5 times. Okay. So practicing that looks like, okay, I missed my run this morning at 6:00. I didn't seize the day before 0600. Why? It was cold. Why? There was a weather front. So why? Right? Because it's winter. Right? Why is it winter? Oh, because the season's changing. Before you realize, as you go down that tree, you realize whether you're whining or if you really had a barrier. 9 times out of 10, it's probably the former. So that blends right in with just some of that self-accountability and just doing small things. And that's another example. Life is about decisions and consequences, right? And progress is just waking up in the morning, making that bed, and then maybe going for that 15, 20, 25-minute walk, right? And the same thing with your eating choices, right? Nobody's standing over you, with a baking rolling pin saying, oh, you better go do this. But we know, and studies show, that if we have high blood sugar, if we have high cholesterol, there are things that we can take charge of if we just pay attention to what we're putting in our bodies, right? So like you said, invest on yourself, bet on yourself, hold yourself accountable, and seize the day before 0600, make it count.
Well, if you get those couple of wins in the morning, right? First of all, it's gonna set you up to most likely have a better day because you're already in a mindset. You're already feeling good about yourself. You're already in a different perspective, feeling capable, feeling strong. But even if you go and have a whole shitty rest of the day, like everything goes wrong, it's just one of those no good, horrible, very bad days, you're still gonna come home and your bed's gonna be made. And it's going to be like, oh, that's nice. Thank you, Pastor B, for making the bed. And one less thing to mentally overwhelm me after this horrible, mentally overwhelming day, right? It's like, it's just about loving yourself. I think the notion of self-care being kind of like chores did not drop into my awareness until the last few years. Again, this is probably obvious to you having been in the military all this time. But to me, it wasn't. I used to think, oh, self-care is when you take a nice bubble bath and you're eating chocolate or whatever. And it's like, no, bitch. Self-care is when you folded your laundry so that like you don't walk into a pile of laundry all over the bed. Like that's self-care.
Find your anxiety contributors and kill them.
Yeah.
Okay. Pay the bills before they're due.
Yeah.
Right. Win the morning by 0600. Okay. We'll let some of y'all cheat. 0700, win the morning.
And 0900 for me.
Hey, if winning the morning means you don't take the elevator to work and you took the stairs, guess what? You are now the uncommon amongst the common. And that's what we're kind of looking for and aspiring to be, right? You got to have that alpha wolf mentality, right? And if you let society take advantage of you, it will. If you let bad foods take advantage of you, it will. If you let bad habits take advantage of you, they will. Right. So you got to kind of have this alpha wolf mentality. And that doesn't mean you become like, the buddy screwer at work or whatever. That's not what being an alpha is. Being an alpha is actually opposite, right? It's helping people by, letting them know what their superpowers are, not what yours is, especially as a supervisor or leader. Right. But, if you let the bad things in, if you let the bad things win, they will. You just lay down and just let the day have its way with you. It certainly will. And that's whether you're dealing with a boss, an employee, could be a child, right? It could be a friend, could be a family member. Ooh, don't get me started on that, Michelle. But have your barriers, have your red lines, and seize the day. It's one less thing you got to think about. Hey, I was going to ask you, what are you finding that is nutritionally challenging for you? Let's peel the onion back on that a little bit. I'd love to get more.
Yeah. It's the snacking at the end of the day, because what I tend to do is get busy during the day and not eat enough. And this actually started with good intention. I actually had lost a lot of weight in like 2019, 2020 doing intermittent fasting. And so I wasn't really eating much during the day. And then I would have I would think, well, I can't possibly eat more than 2,000 calories in one meal at night. So if I do one meal a day and it's dinner, I can kind of eat whatever I want. Well, this actually created kind of a binge eating habit late at night, which is not good for my body. I've been wearing a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, which has taught me that actually I'm going to do better if I eat things earlier in the day. But my habit is to like work all day, not eat very much, and then go at night, go ham at dinner, which is, works well with the social life and everything else, and then just eat until like, it's like, so it's not necessarily what the food is, it's the timing of the food, because I can eat a potato, which is perfectly nutritious, by the way, in my worldview, right? I can eat a potato at lunch and my blood sugar is good with that and I won't metabolize that. But if I eat a potato at dinner, my blood sugar's fucked up all night.
For me, it was the same thing. It was, I would eat dinner. I would try to finish eating dinner probably about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at the latest, because I want to give my body time to kind of digest, process, so I could get to bed maybe 4 hours later. My rule was to go to bed 4 hours after I ate. So, if I'm doing 6, I'm in the bed by 10. That's another thing we've realized here, as we approach our mid-40s is, man, if I get to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock, that's a win.
Yes.
That's a win.
I love going to bed early
8 o'clock. If I'm in the bed at 8 o'clock, I get up so excited in the morning. It just changed my whole day. I don't know. I'm kind of dating myself now, but oh my God. Anyhow, but yeah, for me, it was the same thing. And I realized, I would come downstairs and just open up the pantry and just look, right? And again, life is about decisions and consequences. And what I kind of forced myself to do with the whole thing I told you about habits and you controlling your you and 5 whys and seizing the day before 0600, I got to a point where I was seizing the night by 2100. So by 9 o'clock, right? And so I made conscious decisions. I remember the first time I did this, I went to Costco, and I love Costco, not because you get a lot for your buck, but they have these wonderful little baked oatmeal cookies, and you don't just buy 1 or 12 of them, you buy like 2 dozen of them. And they were soft oatmeal cookies.
Oh, God.
And I was going through like 6 in a session at night, just nom, 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 nom. And, I'm thinking they're healthy because they're oatmeal raisin cookies. So if you're going to have a cookie, have an oatmeal raisin cookie, right? It's healthy. Oats and raisins.
The
sugar. And then I got my blood work done, and I got a stern talking to from my provider. And he kind of put the fear of Odin in me. See what I did there? Mm-hmm. Kind of put the fear of Odin in me. And he was like, hey, you can keep doing this, and the consequences, you're going to get to a point where you're literally shaving years off your life, because you are predisposed to diabetes. It's already in your genetics. You're fit as a fiddle, but your blood just, and the way your body processes sugar just sucks. So yeah, thanks, Mom, if you're watching. And so I traded in those Costco cookies for those Costco veggie dishes. And if you know what I'm talking about,
it's such a harsh leap.
Yeah. And I literally set it in the fridge. And I forced myself not to buy the oatmeal cookies. And instead of going downstairs and snacking on 6 cookies, I went downstairs and snacked on 6 pieces of, celery, carrots, cauliflower, broccoli. And I got to a point where I actually kind of enjoyed it. Maybe that's just weird and, just totally off the wall of me, but I got to a point where I actually enjoyed it, and I think that also came from the Army, because the Army is all about loving it when everything just sucks.
You're just running through the rain going, I love it. I love it.
100% took the words out of my mouth. It's like, man, I love it when it sucks. How can this suck some more? Right.
Yeah.
And so I got to a point of doing that. And now Michelle, it's become not to be a goody two shoes, but it's become a habit. Like my cravings at night now are to go downstairs and get that celery and cauliflower and dip it in a little bit of peanut butter or honey. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Honey. That's my new jam. And now I don't miss cookies. Again, absolutely. I made a conscious decision, turned it into a habit. It's now a discipline that kind of becomes my standard.
Well, when you stop eating sugar, you start to realize how addictive sugar is, because you don't want it anymore. And in fact, you start to have like a disgusted reaction to it. Like, oh, there's a birthday cake. And it's like, I don't want that at all. In fact, fruit is my new sugar. Like, I love fruit. Fruit's my jam. And you start to realize, oh, I didn't actually even really like that before. It was just like such an addictive, my body was addicted to it. And so, I find that because I don't eat a whole lot of sugar, but if I do eat sugar, then I want more sugar. And it becomes very obvious how that pattern sets off, and habits compound for good, for better or for worse. Bad habits also compound. You can have a day where you just go ham and have a cheat day and eat whatever crazy food you want. And if you've been eating clean and working out, and you have one day like that per quarter, you're not gonna, gain a bunch of weight. It's gonna be fine. But if you start to do that every day, it's like that old movie Super Size Me, where the guy ate McDonald's for 30 days and saw what happened to his body. That starts to compound. I want to talk to you about this concept where people will really put off their comfort later for comfort now in these ways where it's like, okay, well, I can't delay my reward. I need to feel better now. And so I'm going to eat. And then, I've struggled with emotional eating, just like a lot of people. I'm going to go get those fries now. And I'm not going to worry about what that's going to do to my body later versus, hey, if I eat clean every day for months and months and months, I'm going to fit in my pants better. And I'm going to be comfortable like that, right? A different kind of comfort.
And you're literally investing into your life. You are prolonging your life. Like the studies, the evidence, the science is out there. I'm not going to belabor that point. People can go out there and read it. You can really go research and see just how bad sugar is for you. And again, this isn't the golden boy goody two shoes over here because I still have my vices, but what I do control is what and when, how much quantity I put into my body, and I just don't do it at night anymore. And there was like a light switch that went off, and now I almost crave, coming downstairs and getting the unsalted pretzel, lightly salted pretzel with the hummus, or a carrot stick with a little bit. Notice I said a little bit of like organic ranch dressing or whatever. So that gave me my power back. That's a big thing, right? Is regaining your power, regaining your control. It's something that a lot of people that struggle with, we're kind of getting to another topic here, but like mental health, a lot of people are victims of serious crimes or assaults. You'll hear a lot of therapy about taking your power back. And for me, that's what eating right allowed me to do, was to take some of that power back. Because like you, I was also an emotional eater. I went through some really, really dark times. And the way I coped with that was I stress ate, came home and just went ham on a Coke, cherry Coke to be particular. My all-time favorite. And, I've even had to mitigate that, but I too was an emotional stress eater, and it really knocked my blood levels off the wall to the point to where doctors was like, hey, you want to start, statins and pre-diabetic meds now, or do you want to kind of like do it yourself? Cause this is what you're looking at. And, do you like your legs? Because we can cut those off, do you like your eyes? Cause you can go blind, and all the horror stories you hear, but it's all about, you control your you. Habits create the discipline that become our standards. And then just 5 why your barriers. Get to the root cause of why you didn't accomplish something. And be fair to yourself.
5 why framework, I always kind of talk about it as like treating yourself like a toddler, where, when you have a toddler and you say, oh, we can't have a cookie, they go, why? And you go, but it does help you dig down into the root cause of something sometimes. And sometimes, it's helpful to have a coach or a practitioner or a therapist guide you along this, but you can guide yourself. Well, why don't I want to go on a run? Well, it's uncomfortable. Well, why don't I want to be uncomfortable? Because that triggers things from times that I was uncomfortable before, and that brings up my shit. Well, why don't I want to bring up my shit? It's like, well, I don't want to process it. And you start to think, and then it's like, hey, if you've asked yourself why 5 times, and then you've still made the decision not to go on the run, like, okay, maybe you're really sick that day, or like, it's like, you don't have to run every single day, but we're trying to get to like 95% of the time. And we're trying to get to those exceptions being rare. And sometimes you can justify it to yourself, but if you're justifying it to yourself every single day, you're not going to have the result that you want, obviously.
Yeah. And I'm giggling because in the military, we had a phrase for that too. It was stop being a Mitch.
Yeah.
Sub the M where appropriate, but stop being a little Mitch.
Yeah. It's interesting because I got to a certain point in my life by having that attitude. Obviously, I was never in the military, but both my parents were in the military. We grew up in a military town. There's a lot of military culture. And I grew up on suck it up, buttercup, and put your big girl pants on and rub some dirt on it and all of that. And it was really like, it gets you to a certain point. But at a certain point, then you go, okay, I'm not going to get any further by continuing to dissociate from my negative feelings, push it down in a box, I actually had for a small time, I had a boyfriend who was an Army Ranger, and he taught me this trick of like putting the feeling in a box and letting it tying a parachute to it and letting it float away. He's like, you do that shit. But it's the point in your life, just like where you got to face the possibility of diabetes. There's a point in your life where you do have to allow for all of those suppressed emotions to come up and start to process through them, or they are going to store in your body, and that's going to have negative health effects as well, right? And so you are so positive all the time. But I know that you've been through some shit. I know you've had to process through some shit. Talk to us about the other side of that. Talk to us about feeling the hard feelings.
Yeah, I'll just share with the group, and I'll just. Some people are like, well, why is he oversharing so much? And I don't think it's oversharing. I went through some shit, whether it was multiple tours in combat, like on the front lines. I don't like to say all the stuff you see in movies because the movies romanticize a lot about war. And I'll just say this: I hate war in a way that only a soldier can, right? And so there were some really, really dark times associated with that. There was a period where I went through divorce. There were some times where I went through some significant career strife because of that, because I really just kind of lost the wind in my sails. Like I just, didn't want to do it anymore. And, I came to a point where, I'll be frank, and there's people out there watching this that probably need to hear this. There was a point where I really questioned myself. What am I here for? It got that dangerous. And I really, back in 2019 into 2020, early 2020, I got to a point where I started having conversations like, I don't want to do this anymore. It hurts too much. And I'm just tired of just sucking every day, And so I made plans to just go ahead and just terminate myself. I'll be frank about it. And so what really did it for me is obviously went to therapy and counseling, got the help I needed. And it's really kind of, ignited that path that you've seen as of late, right? And what really stuck with me is that I had gleaned that my struggles were not uncommon. First of all, I had gleaned that my struggles would also someday be somebody else's guidebook. And of all the people I knew, all the people I've led, all the people I've been associated and tied to, for me to kind of basically come out and say, I too was a victim of self-doubt, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, divorce, false witnesses born against me. And the fact that I was able to kind of defeat all that and really get a hold of my life and get the wind back under my sails, somebody out there is listening right now and it's like, man, me and this guy got a lot in common. And so if I could do what I call overt outreach and affect somebody, and even if it's just one body, Michelle, it sounds cliche, but it was absolutely worth it, right? There's too many people that go out there that are what I call silent sufferers. And so when you see the posts that I make or the things I talk about, or you see my little quips about, hey, we need to normalize men's health, right? Make it okay to talk to your sons. It's okay for a father to tell their son often that they love them, to hug them. And hey, you know what? Every once in a while, kiss them on the cheek. That's okay. Our sons need that. I didn't get a lot of that. And that's not because my father was a bad person. A lot of it had to do with how he was brought up. And so sometimes we don't know how to be emotionally vulnerable for our kids, especially our sons. And so what really kind of, helped me trudge along was, man, there's so much more to give. Somebody's out there going, if I went through it as successful as I was and how high and how fast I got to where I was going, then I guarantee there's probably 1,100 others out there that could read and benefit from the message. So yeah, that's really what it was for me. You asked, what helped me kind of get refocused and re-anchored. And it was the fact that I was going through what I was going through, and I wanted to, at some point, the light switch just switched, and I wanted to go back to being the conqueror instead of being conquered. And a lot of it had to do with me being here for my kids to kind of show them that you can bounce back from when you're at your lowest of lows. That's the other thing. What message was I sending to them had I gone through with my plan to terminate myself? They would have been affected their entire lives. And I could not, that is a burden I didn't want them to bear.
100%. And I really appreciate you sharing that. It's so much more common than people realize. And as a coach, I can tell you, we get underneath people's trauma and into the core wounds. And it doesn't matter who you're talking to from what walk of life, man, woman, old, young, gay, straight, rich, poor, the core wounds are the same. It's like, I'm not enough, or I'm too much, or I'm not good enough, or I'm worthless, or there's something in there that's driving all of this behavior. And it's so common to hit that point, especially with divorce. I'm glad you brought that up. I just went through one myself, a really rough one the last couple of years. It's so common to hit that point that's just like, man, it would just be easier to get out. By the way, sidebar, I read this book a couple of months ago called Journey of Souls. Fascinating book. It's a hypnotherapist that spent 30 years guiding people who had near-death experiences into hypnotic states and asking them questions about what was on the other side. And then fascinating. And he wrote a book about all the similarities of all their accounts under hypnosis. And one of the things was, he talks about the souls deciding what kind of life they want to go into and going into life to learn a certain amount of lessons or whatever. But the question of suicide comes up. And what they said was basically like, if you do that, if you bail out early, you get back up there and the place is like, they're not mad, they're just disappointed. But they're basically like, okay, well, that was kind of a waste because now you got to go do that same life over again. But you didn't learn the thing you were supposed to learn. You bailed out early. And they specifically say like that doesn't apply if you're at the end of your life, like you're already dying and you decide to take some drugs and kind of do assisted, that's not the same thing. But if you're in the middle of your life and you go, nope, I'm out, they'll take you back and go, cool, we're going to put you right back into the same type of life and you're going to do that again. So that in of itself has kept me in the dark times being like, well, I don't want to read the whole fucking thing. So I guess I'll just stay here and keep learning.
I don't want to go back to the fucking Citadel again, much less Lawton, Oklahoma. So.
But you loved it. It was great. It was so fun. But no, I so appreciate what you're saying about men and boys, and like I'm secretly holding a vision for you where you become a coach for men. For men coaching men.
Yeah,
we fuck up men so much in our society. We talk a lot about how we fuck up women, and we do fuck up women. We sure do, and we fuck up men in the ways that you're talking about. I love coaching men. I coach everybody, right? And I've had male clients tell me, oh my gosh, I couldn't open up to you in the same way if you were a man, which is really interesting to me. Like, because you're a woman, I can be vulnerable and we can get into this. But so many men need to heal their relationships with other men.
Yeah. Michelle, you hit the nail on the head again. I mean, there's research out there and you do enough reading. It's easy for us to open up to people like you and therapists because it's like that maternal submission again, right? Like we all want the good mom figure back in our life. Whereas going to another man, it's just, we're dogs at the dog park, man. I'm gonna sniff your butt, you're gonna sniff mine, and I'm gonna pucker my chest, you're gonna pucker yours. And you got to get past that, right? But with women, there's just a softer, more resonating approach. And you guys are able to see and pick up on things that we're just completely blind to. I'm a whole subscriber to that whole, what was it? Women are from Venus, men are from Mars. Maybe I said it backwards, but there are things you guys can tap into that we would never see. In fact, when I was in the military, some of the best officers I served with were women because they were seeing things in real time that I was just oblivious to because of ego, right? Because of, I'm the alpha in the room. Yeah. Listen to me. I'm the commander. I'm in charge. And then I'd have, a female staff officer come up to me and go, were you accounting for this variable or this variable? I'm like, what are you talking? And I'd catch myself like, oh my God, you're 100% right. Hey, hold up, roll the tape back. And so that's what it is. It's that submission to that maternalness. I'm making up words now. Write that one down. That you guys offer. It's easier to talk to you guys. It's easier to take feedback and even criticism when we need it. We can shut down the barriers and listen to the good medicine, the good soup. And that resonates. My first two therapists were women. And it was just, once they got around the edges, it was just really, really just to come out to them and tell them what the barriers were and why I felt like what I felt like, and just, take what they were saying as gospel and really work on some of the things they were pointing out. And so now I get that from my daughter, because she's a psychology major and she's always trying these theories on me and trying to figure me out and tell me why I think the way I think and why I am the way I am. I love it. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. I mean, men, listen, women, you're absolutely right. Huge, women's advocate, especially along the domestic violence track. If you're in an abusive relationship, get out. There's help. Stop thinking about when you're going to go. Another public service announcement there. But it's not that I prefer to triage the men over the women. It's just I realize that there is a gap, a bona fide gap there on the men's side of the house, because you got a bunch of people walking around that are like me, like a bunch of meat eaters and alpha male types. And it's like, they don't want to talk about their feelings because our dads taught us that, well, you don't talk about your feelings, boy,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Boys don't cry and all that stuff. And it's women are beautiful and wonderful, and men are beautiful and wonderful. I have 2 sons.
Yeah.
Men are beautiful and wonderful and sensitive and loving. And there is such a wonderful potential for men to step into a beautiful, nurturing, masculine energy. At the time that we're recording this, Mark Zuckerberg just came out a couple of days ago and was like, we need more masculine energy in the corporate space because we need to be more aggressive. And I was like, no, that's not what masculine energy is. Masculine energy is about providing and protecting and being calm when there's a storm, and providing structure and providing that like fatherly nurturing love. That, and yes, we absolutely fucking need more of that, but what we don't need is more aggression.
100%. And I would tell you, I'll take it a step further. Men that are like that and have that in their lives turn out to be better husbands and fathers. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
How about that? 100%. They can identify, right?
100%.
They don't get the cold hard stares, or put some dirt on it, and and I'm not saying coddle, that we should do a complete 180 and just overdo it, but for the fathers out there, man, listen to your sons. They need you.
There's got to be balance. There's got to be harmony, and we need to celebrate men as men in all the beautiful ways that men can show up, and all of the wonderful benefits that men can provide to society. And I think when we start to categorize men as aggressive brutes who are, just stupid assholes and they're only good for physical labor or whatever, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I've had men show up in relationship with me, and I've had to say to them, that you're more than like your dick and your paycheck, right? Because they've been told their whole life that that's the good they provide to a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, right? Like, those are the 2 things that they have to offer. And it's like, no, dude, you're a whole fucking person. It's like, I'm a whole fucking person, and I am here to provide more than just like cooking dinner or watching or whatever, right? Like, we need to see each other as people.
It's funny, you're in Army basic training, they tell you that's literally all you got when you come out, because you disappear for 4 months and then you graduate and all you have left is your dick and your paycheck.
That's what in the Army. This is where this came from. Now I know it's a mystery. It was like, why are all these men believing this?
Yeah, it's all the unlearning, like just decades, for me, almost 2.5 decades of just unlearning, right? But you catch on pretty quick. You as a leader, you figure out really quick, especially as a leader of men. And then later on in my career, as a leader of men and women, because the higher you move, the more broader range, scale, scope you got. Like my early jobs were probably 95% male dominated organizations. And as I rose in the ranks and was put in charge of staffs and directorates and commands and things of that nature, the room started to look a lot not like me. And that's probably a topic for another day. But, if you walk into a room and you sit down and you're, the chair of the board, and everybody in that room looks like you, talks like you, dresses like you, has the same educational background and credentials as you, you've got a major significant problem. Listen, yes, you got to divide it up. And you need different perspectives. But yeah, no, absolutely, Michelle, you're spot on. Hey, I was going to ask you, well, I forgot. It'll come back.
We can do this again anytime. I loved having you on the show. Thank you so much for being here and just giving us your perspective. And I really do hope that you pursue a coach path, because you are just, man, you're right there for it.
I appreciate it. I think I will. I'm getting really close to pulling the trigger on that. I need another. My daughter tells me, the psychologist, she tells me all the time, Dad, you need another hobby. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying learning from people like you. It's all therapeutic, and it's all intriguing, and it's all educational. And when you're doing those 3 things, you become unstoppable. Be the uncommon amongst the common. And what that means is do the things others won't. Read, educate yourself, empathize, right? Humanize, like all that stuff, and it's crazy that you got to go through the gauntlet sometimes to kind of really learn that. But that's just, that's when you're made. It didn't break you, but it made you.
Take it from a couple of old fogies, man. If it didn't break you, it made you. Love it so much. Thank you, JT, for being here. Really have appreciated you being on the show, and everybody listening and watching. Thank you for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Michelle. Anytime.